Hi, hello, this is Haley, and this is the Witch's Lair coming at you from my house, because it's that real. It is still a full moon in Cancer. Um, Currently creeping up on, are we coming up on Aquarius season? Let's see. Yeah, you're always going to see me looking at notes because I think about all this in advance and write it all up. And then finally, when I get some time away from my kid, I come in here and knock him out. So can't judge me because ADHD is real. I thought for this next episode that we would go over spiritual hygiene because when I teach the craft, lead spiritualist on their path, whatever you want to freaking call it, this is where we always start. Spiritual hygiene is the number one most important thing. Learning your energy, learning how to ground, how to differentiate between people's energies, your own and theirs. Um, Protecting yourself and respecting others, and where, empathy needs to have boundaries, things like that. I feel like that's the first thing that you need to be working on when you're getting into the craft. Everyone's like, oh, I'm going to do a cord cutting or, whatever they may, venture into. This is important. So, so important. So we're going to talk about, spiritual hygiene. It's not, fearing energy. It's protecting yourself from the world or assuming, every and not assuming that everything is out to get to you. It's about care. A lot of people have issues when they first start out on their path where they're trying to decipher between everything's not a message from spirit. It's not some like sign or symbol. Not every single thing is going to be like that. Sometimes it just is life. So spiritual hygiene really is about knowing that, not everything is a divine message and not everything's out to get to you. You're not cursed. You're not hexed. Most people think they are, and it's really just their own karmic patterns. So, just like your house needs regular cleaning and washing, your emotional and energetic self needs the same thing. Needs gentle, consistent tending to. Not because something is wrong, but it's because you're alive and connected and, contact with other humans. So it's normal and it's needed. But it's maintenance, it's not fear. That's one thing that you really have to start with, of just like understanding it's not about fearing what's going on around. It's just about maintaining it. We're not talking about paranoia or psychic attacks or being afraid of energy. It's more talking about care in the same way that you would care for your body, in your home, your emotions. Spiritual hygiene is just what keeps you grounded while being intuitive and to not disconnect from life. If spirituality is about embodiment, hygiene is what makes embodiment sustainable. And that's really important. So, we don't brush our teeth only when we have a cavity, and we don't, wait until the house smells to clean it. Well, spiritual hygiene works the same way. It's prevents buildup, prevents collecting, holding energy that's not for our highest divine good. So it's not, something you do when you're in crisis. It's what keeps you from living in constant crisis mode. Most people wait until they're overwhelmed, and that's part of the problem. They wait until it's like, oh, now everything's crashing down around me. Now let's try and find some spiritual hygiene practices. And it's like, yeah, you can do that, but you really shouldn't have to get to that space before you start practicing spiritual hygiene. But it's just, maintenance that keeps your baseline stable. Um, and if the only time you clear your energy is when you're feeling already overwhelmed, you're just playing catch up. Like, I'm already here. It's like, now I'm just trying to get to ground zero, and shit, it is a fight to get there. So things to do to prevent getting to that point. But it doesn't mean that something's wrong. It's, you don't clean when you're dirty all the time. It's like, oh yeah, I could just use a shower. Like, I'm not really dirty, but it's not the same type of sense. But it's energy collects, and that's something that I talk about with people with their houses. I'm like, when you want to cleanse the house, you need to clean the house first. And when you're cleaning the house, you need to look at where things where clutter collects, because that's where negative energy collects. It's good to, like, okay, I'm not going to get rid of all this, but let's pick it up, let's wipe it down, move it around, shift it, move the energy. It's the same thing with spiritual hygiene. Your you're going to cleanse yourself. Okay, well, we need to go through and figure out what we need to release, what we need to let go of. So it's the same concept. So it's not always like, oh, I'm doing deep cleaning. It's, maintenance to avoid having to do deep cleaning because we're already maintaining it better. But needing to clear your energy doesn't mean something bad happened. It just means that you lived. And that's how it works with the house. Well, we have clutter because we lived. I got this trinket in that book and this whatever, and this is, the mail, and we're just living. So we just need to organize it better and manage it better. And that's what spiritual hygiene is. So, it's, because energetic, emotional buildup is really subtle. You don't really notice it. And I talk about landfill emotions a lot, where you have these emotions because somebody else put their emotion into your emotion. They made you feel that way with their, not by like forcing you to feel that way, but just the subtle interactions with people. They say something, they do something. Um, and those little jabs go into the pile and then they build up and they accumulate. So you don't notice it at first, but then later on you're in an argument. You're in an argument or an exchange with somebody and it just like escalates. And it's like, well, how the hell did we get here? Well, they said something or did something that came from a landfilled emotion wound that we haven't worked through. And here we are, so it's really important to be able to decipher between, again, yourself and others, because the buildup can be really subtle and micro stresses really happen. And that's that small unnoticed moment of tension, like, from a conversation that you didn't really process and a boundary you didn't name, emotion reaction you swallowed and carried instead of feeling it. I mean, how many times do you get in those situations where you have an exchange with somebody, if you lean one way with it or another, it's not really going to go the way you'd want to either way. So you just consume it and you move on. And it's like, okay, you ate it. Now when do you digest it? Really gross, but same concept. You consume something. How do you get rid of something? You don't just hold it in your body forever. I mean, I know they joke around and say, I wonder if that is a joke. Don't judge me. They're like, yeah, you swallow gum and it stays inside you for 7 years. I remember them always saying that growing up. And it's like, things don't usually work that way. It's like we consume it. How do we let go of it? But when we don't let go of it, it creates those micro stresses, little stresses that accumulate because all these little things happen. And then we're like a little tiny teapot and we just explode. And that's because we're responding from a wound that hasn't been addressed. And so we're carrying it and it's this lingering energy and it's negative and it's low vibrational. It makes you low vibrational. So, holding space without releasing, it really can drown you. It really can. It really can drown you. Most energetic buildup isn't dramatic. Uh, it's collective over time. And it's the little things that we don't process in the moment that really come back and like bite us in the ass later. And then you feel silly about it because you're just like, that was it. It's like, yeah, that was it. It's like, dude, fucking let it go, And people like me, we don't always let it go. So that's a Scorpio moon. But hygiene keeps small things from being, spiritual problems later. And it's like, well, I have a blocked throat chakra because I kept going through these conversations and I'm not, I'm swallowing instead of speaking. And now I don't have a voice. That's where these things happen. That's how they accumulate. And so when we, don't tend to our emotional and energetic state, regulating it, our small, stressors start to stack up. Fatigue gets misread as intuition. Anxiety gets labeled as a download. And that's something that I really want to repeat. Fatigue gets misread as intuition and anxiety gets labeled as a download. There have been so many incidents where I've had with people where they're speaking from a wound, they're projecting at me, and they're chalking it up as spirit and as intuition. And they're having a hard time deciphering, besides the fact that you haven't left the house in 6 days. And you're staying in here in your dark home around all your clutter and you're doom scrolling and you're, burning out and you're labeling it as a dark night of the soul. And you haven't gone and touched grass and put your face in the sun in days. But you're going to sit here and tell me that this interaction we're having that's no longer positive is because of an intuitive download. No. That's fucked up. We can't act like that. That's going back to the whole like people being like, oh, well, because Mercury was in retrograde, that's why I was allowed to be a dick. No. Spiritual hygiene. No. Lock in. Out of, mind into body. Be present. Because you can't sit there and take your fatigue and say it's your intuition because you're not chemically balanced. You're not getting your fucking vitamin D. You're not taking care of your body. You're not existing from your own space where you're healing and taking care of yourself. So our interactions are going to be mixed up. And, while those experiences can have their moments where they become spiritual, it really does often, become very blurry for people when they're navigating in these ways. So, our nervous system asking us to rest and ground and seek care is really important to listen to, because when we don't, it starts to mess with the other systems down to our primal instinct because we're so off balance. But spiritual hygiene helps you tell the difference between genuine insight and emotional residue. It helps you from over spiritualizing what is actually human exhaustion, and not everything that feels intense is a message. Sometimes it's just unprocessed life asking to be cleared. So it's really important to be deep in spiritual hygiene to be your best self, because you're clearing out the negative, harnessing the good so you can do better and be better. So it's, normalizing gentle, regular tending to. And it isn't, meant to be intense or ceremonial all the time or time consuming every time you do it. In fact, when care becomes overly elaborate, people often stop doing it consistency because it became such a big thing. The most effective forms of tending to are quiet and ordinary, water running over your hands, a deep breath after a heavy conversation, placing your feet on the grass, just noticing your body again. I start every day with grounding. I count to 13. I talk about the intentions that I want for the day, the energy I want to feel, the things I don't want to feel. And sometimes I'll have that recentering 3 times a day. Start of work, my lunch break, and when I get home and I'm laying in bed. And just having those check-ins to help regulate what's going on, because we can get so wrapped up in our head that we get lost in the sauce, So it's really important to have those check-ins. And it doesn't have to be this whole, all right, I've got my incense burning and my candle burning and my yoga mat and my pillow and these specific spa sounds and hertz frequencies, and it doesn't, those are nice. I fucking love those moments where I get to like bring all my tools and all my crystals, but we have to be able to find a practice that's subtle, that just gives us, I can sit in this desk chair and take 13 deep breaths, counting backwards from 13, going through each of my chakras, just to come back to center, just to come back to myself, out of mind, into body, into presence. And that's what that spiritual hygiene is really important about. Because again, when we get back to center, we're speaking from a place of authenticity, a place of balance. We're speaking with pure intent, and we're not getting muddied up in emotions. And that's that regular tending that teaches our system that it doesn't need to wait for overwhelm to receive the care. It builds trust within yourself. Simple practices done often keep your energy clear without turning spirituality into a performance or an obligation. Gentle doesn't mean ineffective. It means sustainable. That's the big thing. So normalizing gentle, regular tending, and, knowing that normalizing gentle means sustainable. It means sustainable. Normalizing sustainable spiritual hygiene. It's just extremely important as we navigate this crazy, crazy world with so many things that are coming at us in so many different ways, from family responsibilities to work to, the shit that we see on the internet. I am so over videos on the internet because it's just like, it's so much. And it's all doom and it's all high energy of chaos. And, I just, I'm over it. And, so for me, a form of tending is navigating that and protecting myself so I'm not seeing as much anymore and not doom scrolling as much. And it's not always easy because it's so easy to disconnect and disassociate. But those are the things that I noticed in my regular tending to that create a balance for me. But when we start tending to ourselves gently and consistently, something important happens. We, stop confusing hygiene with avoidance, and, because caring of your energy isn't about running from discomfort. It's about meeting it without letting it take over you. So you're meeting the problem before it becomes a problem. You're getting ahead of the problem. You're getting ahead of the overwhelm. And in doing that, it keeps it from taking over. And that's where that burnout is, and so forth. So, it's not about bypassing your emotions. It's clearing things before you feel them, or, it's not about pretending everything is fine. It just means giving yourself enough regulation and containment to actually stay present with what's real. And when our, system feels supported, emotions can move through instead of getting stuck. And that's really important to keep that flow and to, keep cycling through because it's always going to be something. It's never going to be perfect. We'll have our moments where it's peaceful, but you get rid of one thing and another pops up. And that's the cycle of life because we're out here living. Livin. We are living. So we got to, avoid avoidance because it numbs and hygiene grounds. So once, you disconnect from yourself, the other, help. It's like once you, disconnect from yourself, the other helps remain you inside your body. It's like when I have that disconnect, the spiritual hygiene helps me get back to center. And clearing your energy isn't about erasing feelings, it's about making space to process them without drowning in them because we have to acknowledge them. We have to acknowledge them. We have to acknowledge the emotions, and even though we don't want to, the uncomfy ones. I mean, I feel like this past year, it's been one after another for me, and the regret of, or the fear of being alone, but wanting to be alone, abandonment issues, avoiding issues. This past year of trying to figure out how to not avoid conflict because conflict with others is hard. I had a lot of conflict this year, and I don't think I'm done. We're getting into 2026, and I think more will pop up, but my spiritual hygiene helps me lock in those situations and remember myself, remember my worth, remember what I want out of this world and that it's okay and it's acceptable to say, this is what I want. And no, I don't agree with that. And this is how I feel because I know I'm moving from a place of love. I always am. I don't have really malice in my body. So it's like, what I ask for shouldn't be that much. And my spiritual hygiene helps me remember that. And that goes back to power. It helps you stand in your power because you're balanced, you're regulated, you're understanding, you're not overwhelmed, you're not speaking from a place of fear. Um, so when we understand that hygiene isn't avoidance, we start to see the bigger picture. And that isn't just, how you feel today. It's about whether your spirituality is something you can, live inside long term and it really helps you see everything that is working around you and how other people are just struggling just as much as you are. So you give them more grace because you're seeing the bigger picture that they're just as wounded as you are. And, spiritual paths don't fall apart because people lack devotion or depth. They fall apart because people become depleted. They, when there's no culture of maintenance, sensitivity turns into exhaustion and service turns into overgiving and intuition turns into constant vigilance. And it's like, you can burn out so much and then you want to chalk it up as dark night of the soul. And it's like, that's not really what that was, babe. It's not really what that was. And you got to own the reality. And it's hard to sometimes because it's like, damn, reality's a bitch. And it's like, I know, but it is. And it's yours. And it's yours to mold and make and change. And it starts with you getting out of that shitty energy and out of that shitty mindset and being like, all right, let's look at it this way. Let's spin this perspective because I can tell you right now, anything that we go through, we can spin it. We can make it our own. And, a lot of burnout gets mislabeled as a loss of faith or callings that no longer fit when reality, the issue is, unsustainable self-sacrifice. So spiritual hygiene teaches us how to stay connected without being consumed. It reminds you that, longevity matters more than intensity. And I talk about it all the time. People in the spiritual communities around me often are just clout chasers, spiritual clout chasers. We're just looking for the next thrill of, I messed with this spirit board and I did this cord cutting and this candle that I bought exploded. And it's so like, oh my gosh. And it's like, you're getting wrapped up in all this. You start to, after a while, start to feel depleted when the magic stops happening and the clout stops happening because it's not consistent. It's not sustainable. That's not what it really is. Spirituality and spiritual hygiene and the craft and the path isn't about the performance. It's about the reality, and being able to sense who you are as a person, know where your layers are, where the depths are, where that dark night of the soul really is, and being able to address it, navigate it, and to do better. And because when we're doing better, we're being better for our, family and our friends and our coworkers. When we're unhealed and we're just running in these loops, it's counterproductive. We're sucking everybody down with us. And it's just now it's that whole concept of the snake eating its tail. You're just eating your own ass, man. So we really have to see that spirituality isn't about the clout. It isn't about the drama. It's about owning who we are, owning our flaws, owning our ego, owning the bullshit, and finding a way to accept it, give it grace, and move forward. And so it's really, really. important to build care into your practice, and something that supports your life instead of draining it. And that's what maturity looks like, choosing practices that nourish who you are over time, not just in moments of emotional or spiritual peaks. It's like, oh, I did this when I was going through that and I stopped doing it. It's like, well, it worked so well that you stopped doing it. Do it again. Get back into it. Get a practice that comes from a foundation of care for yourself. And that goes back to loving yourself. So when we start thinking about sustainability, something shifts and the focus moves from managing everything around us to just coming back to ourselves, and self-containment is the ability to be present, intuitive, and compassionate without losing yourself in the process. It's knowing where you end and the world begins. And many sensitive and spiritually inclined people are taught that subtle or, that inner self, that type of being that we are, it means that we're, open to being available, and that availability equals goodness. It's like, well, if I can be so intuitive and I can heal and I can share light, then that means I need to be available to everybody. And it's like, no, babe, if anything, it means you need to be less available. And that's something I had to come into reality with Women's Circle, coming up on 4 years of doing this. It's like, dude, you can't be there for everybody at every point. I'm a mom. I work full time. I'm a daughter. I'm in a relationship. I'm in my friendships. I'm in everything. And then I'm leading Women's Circle, and we average anywhere between 30 to 11 girls at my house once a month. And they're going through it, and they're needing support, and they need to be validated. And so I'm like, well, if I can do all these things and be all these things, it means I need to be available to everyone at every time. It's like, no, that's terrible spiritual hygiene. We have to have boundaries to prevent burnout, because you pour and pour and pour, and you pour from an empty cup. It's like you're burning out, you're drying up. What's left for you? It's, that concept, the airplane's going down. You got to put your mask on before you can put on anybody else's. So you have to have the spiritual hygiene to know when to balance, know when to limit, know when to say no, because people aren't supposed to catch they're not supposed to come from, taking from your cup that's full. They're supposed to catch the overflow. And that's all they get. They get the overflow. They don't get it when the cup's full. The cup's full. Okay, that's your cup. Drink it. It's like, no, I have extra. Okay, let me pour this. Let me pour this. But my cup's still full. But I got a little and I got a little. It's like, that's where you navigate from. When you have so much to give, you have to give in that way, or you will literally dry yourself out and eat yourself up and burn yourself out. And then what's the point? Where's the productivity with that? So, having that containment is knowing, what allows sensitivity to be a gift, not a burden. And when you're containing and you don't need to process everything you sense, you can witness without absorbing. You can care without caring, and you can engage without becoming entangled. And that's the boundaries of an empath. It's knowing when to care without caring and to engage without becoming entangled. Showing up for each other and is showing up for ourselves first. And we have to show up for ourselves and say, okay, I see you and what you're dealing with. It is a lot. I hate that for you. This is what I can do while not burning myself out in the process. It's just extremely important. Reclaiming yourself, remembering that your energy is not a public resource. And you're allowed to come home to yourself, to close your field, to rest inside your own presence. And, grounded people don't do less good in the world. They do it with clarity and longevity and choice. So it's finding that balance of giving to yourself and giving back to others, but putting yourself first is so important with spiritual hygiene. And so when you live from that place, contained and grounded and discerning, spiritual hygiene stops being something you do and more something that you live. And you're not meant to absorb everything just to be wise. That's not how it works. Being able to set those boundaries and put up those limitations is where the wisdom comes from, and where the wisdom is at. That's what's wise, is knowing the start and stop of it all without being cold or disrespectful or rude to others, But spiritual hygiene is devotion in its quietest form. It's a choice to tend to yourself before you deplete, to clear what isn't yours, and to protect what matters without hardening your heart. This fear isn't about avoidance or control. It's about respect for your body, your emotions, your intuition, and your limits. You're not here to absorb the world. You're here to live inside yourself, grounded, resourced, present enough to carry, what you choose to carry. And that too is sacred. We, have to learn those techniques of grounding, centering, clearing energy, deciphering between energy. There's so many different ways to manage yourself. And it starts by just wanting to. I mean, with the TikToks and things you can buy on the internet just to manage yourself, it doesn't matter the tools that you use unless you consciously check in, unless you consciously wake up and say, all right, let me figure out a plan because I hate waking up feeling like my body's full of bees because the anxiety is just riddling me with it. What can I do to come around that? Because I didn't start doing the spiritual practices that I do just to fucking do it. I did it because I woke up and I felt like shit and I needed to bring my power back. I needed to do something about it. I woke up and was like, holy shit, this is like a month now of me feeling like ass and I feel negative and I'm talking bad about myself. I'm talking down to myself and I'm being shitty and everything is triggering me and I'm responding to everybody in a anxiety type way where I'm not even hearing people correctly. So they mean one thing, but I take it as another because I'm not navigating from a place of grounded center where I can see between the mist and the fog of the bullshit. So I started waking up and doing affirmations. I started grounding and centering, doing all the techniques, counting back from 13, imagining a rod coming through your root down into the earth, imagining roots from the earth coming up to you and covering you in earth element energy. Even just simple prayer. I mean, that's how Christians ground and Catholics ground. They pray, they call to somebody, they lock in, pick a form. Find a routine. What works for you? I fucking love affirmations. Speak them all the time. Affirmations, mantras, words. I literally walk around constantly going, everything is fine. Everything's okay. That's it. I repeat that so much. Everything is fine. Everything's okay. Because this damn brain of mine is like, no, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's like, yeah, it is, bro. Even when we're deep in the fucking trenches of life, it's not that deep. We can figure a way out of it. It's not that serious. We're going to come around it. The sun will shine tomorrow. We will figure it the fuck out like we always do. So I hope in your spiritual path, as you started, or even if you've been deep in it and you just need a little reminder, go back to day one stuff as your reminder. For your newbies, find a practice. Go to Half Price Book. Get a book. They got a spiritual section. They've got metaphysical. They've got meditation. They've got self-help. Get on TikTok, get on YouTube, get on the internet, Google it. A lot of people do not like AI and all that it does. I think it's nice to organize your life. It'll help you build a recipe. It'll help you find a mantra for yourself. You can tell it all about the tools that you have and it'll help guide you because when you're down and you're depressed and you're lost and you don't have support and you don't have friends, you turn to something. Turn to something positive. Turn inward and find that for yourself. And I hope that when you do, you start to find something that really lights your soul up. I fucking love affirmations. I love mantras. I love a good, crystal to hold that has the intention that I want to carry. I love moments like that. And grounding and taking a moment and breathing it through because it's like I am that powerful that give me 5 minutes. Give me a minute and I'll bring it all back, So I hope that as you navigate through your path, you remember to get back to center. You remember your boundaries, you remember your self-respect, and you remember that it is not that serious either. So until next time, may the sun guide you and the earth ground you.